Hello, viewers, and welcome to another edition of Fine Tune. My guest today is Mr. Sanjay Hazarika. I think Sanjay Hazarika needs no introduction to the people of this part of the country. He is a writer, a filmmaker, a journalist, and a lot of tags we could add to it. He's presently the executive director of the Center for Northeast Studies at Jamia. He's also the executive trustee of CNES. And apart from that, he's a good human being. Sanjay da, thanks a lot for joining our program today and welcome to Fine Tune.
Welcome to my home.
Wonderful. Yeah, it's always good to be in your home and home away from home, and that too in Shillong. It really feels great. Sanjay da, moving on to something really serious, the issues concerning the region. I mean, you have seen the region from a very close angle. If you talk in terms of the region, the 96% of the area is bordering China, Myanmar, Bangladesh and Bhutan. It's really diverse. What's your take on that?
Well, obviously it is extremely diverse because we have a lot of communities who are of whose origins are in other parts of the larger region, and lots of movements within the region of people who have traveled from what is today one state to another state. Earlier there were no such boundaries, and I think that makes the complexity of the region, its ethnic diversity, makes governance difficult and challenging. And I think it's one of the reasons why sometimes I think Delhi throws up its hands in despair and says, "Aur kya kare? What more can we do?" And within the region itself, there is this tendency of looking at other groups as the other. We are we and they are the other. So this othering, as it were, has been very extensive, and I think it's something that is quite problematic, because once you put compartmentalize people, both in the public image as well as the individual approach, community approach, becomes very complicated, and there are elements of discrimination, prejudice and suspicion. I think really one of the reasons why we have a problem, major problems in the Northeast, is a lack of trust deficit. It's not just between Delhi and the Northeast, it's within the Northeast.
Within the region only, okay. Sanjay, another thing which we often see is that the general perception of the people outside is they think the Northeast is an area, like you have done a lot of studies on the insurgency in the Northeast, who are waging a war against the Indian Army to gain independence. I mean, how do you see it?
I don't think there's anybody takes really seriously any longer this concept that they're really fighting for independence. And I think even in the public there is both a fatigue with this kind of approach, as well as a real questioning of whether these groups seek to achieve what they say they do. So I think that's very important to understand.
Absolutely. But another thing I feel is that majority of the groups who are waging a war, they have gone into the ceasefire with the government.
But I don't think they're waging a war. I think they've been waging a war is a very different kind of connotation. It has a completely different structure, both politically as well as security-wise.
No, but otherwise we can say that those who had taken this path, the government invited them, had a ceasefire. Ceasefire is going on, discussions are being held. Do you think that it's a move of appeasement, a serious commitment on the part of the government to solve the issues which they had raised?
I don't know if the government is serious about solving the problem, but I think that these people at least want out. Otherwise, why would they stay in a peace process that is so prolonged and doesn't seem to be coming to a conclusion? If you take the Naga issue, they've been talking for 16 years.
But again, indulging in activities which are not.
But they're not. But there is something to see here. There is a lack of conflict in Nagaland, but there may not be peace. There is a lack of violence, barring factional clashes and so on. From the government's point of view, I'm sure it's like this. I am not in government, I know people in government. The sense is very clear. Nagaland is a place where not a single Indian soldier has fallen in combat in 5 years. So obviously it's working. From the government perspective, that's working, and the so-called insurgent groups are in various camps, whether it's Hebron or designated camp or whatever you call it. Okay, the smaller groups are in a cessation of hostilities with the unfortunate acronym of SU. SU. And a few have broken away and are. But basically, what we see is that these groups also recognize that the public really doesn't have the patience for this. If you look at the overall perspective, how many groups are there that actually constitute a threat to the nation or to the security?
I don't think so. The things have drastically changed.
So that's basically it. People call for a Bandh, but Assam has the highest footfall in terms of voting. You know, time and again this is shown. Alpha calls for Bandhs. Every time they call for a Bandh, people come out in greater numbers. What does that tell you? So ultimately, they gave up calling for Bandhs.
True. And what do you think about Paresh Barua still continuing with the fight? I mean, despite a major portion of the, ULFA leaders coming out, trying to sit for the peace talks. At the same time, the movement, he wants to keep it up.
Well, I suppose he has always seen himself as different to the others, and has always been the one who's prepared to stand alone. But the question still remains whether he is aware, how aware is he of the ground situation, and what will happen in the future. I mean, we are not privy to his thinking.
True. Sanjay, another thing is that you have seen the region from a very close angle. One of the major issues which is confronting this region is influx. We have been talking about it for over the years. Everyone has been talking. What do you think about the influx which is going on here?
I think first of all, it's much less than it used to be. I don't buy into a sense of either xenophobia or exaggerated fears about vast sweeping demographic change which is taking place. Changes are taking place which have been taking place consistently over a period of time. And recently I think when the census office in the state released some figures, there was a sort of hue and cry over
certain political parties making this an issue.
But the thing is that if you read the figures carefully, you'll actually see that the growth rate in Assam is lower than the national growth rate.
True.
And it's a consistent rate of fall. The area last year which had the maximum violence, Kokrajhar and that side, has the lowest growth rate in perhaps not just in the state but among the lowest in the country. That doesn't mean that there is no migration. Yes, there is migration, but it is much less than it used to be. I think a problem that exists is that people mix up the issue of demographic change with migration. Demographic change includes high fertility rate, high birth rate, it includes MMR, IMR, nutrition,
Absolutely.
the whole works, so it so happens that in Lower Assam, for a variety of sociological or other reasons, there is a very high birth rate and a high fertility because people marry early. And by the time they're 20 or 21, 22, they have had several children. And in many cases, the women die early because their bodies cannot take that kind of strain of, mothering so many children, producing so many children. And so these are real issues. We need to
really think on those terms.
Separate the migration, the illegal influx from the other issues. Because see, one thing that people need to understand is Bangladesh is a large country. It is not a state of India. It's 180 million people. That's 4.5
True, true,
times the size of the Northeast.
Absolutely. So,
So-
this is a
And
misconception
people-
in people's mind, I
No,
guess.
no. People are also very proud to be Bangladeshi. They are proud of the fact that I've been going there for over 20 years.
Sanjay, another topic which I would like to discuss with you. You have been in the Reddy Commission discussing about Armed Forces Special Powers Act. It has just completed 55 years. There's hue and cry not only in the Northeast but in other parts of the country that it needs to be repealed. What's your take on that?
It needs to be repealed.
Not that I mean, you have gone to the
That's
depth. Yes,
the basic thing, but we start from that basis. What is really interesting is that the so-called civilian government is now throwing the ball at the blame at the defense establishment and the army, saying that they have to decide. We can't decide. We want them to change, but they are not changing. And the army is saying, no, you sent us there. You have to find a exit route for us. Both sides are actually correct. But it's unfair of the central government to say that the army is to blame for everything. They have to, they went at the instructions of the government. Now, the longer an armed force stays in an area of conflict, the worse it gets for the people who become victims, as well as for those who are in uniform.
Right.
You know, the uniform is distrusted and hated, and fear and distrust grows among the people. And I think the simple case that I cited of Nagaland, not a single soldier has fallen in combat in 5 years. Then why do you need the act? The state police has the powers to deal with the local problems.
But why is it taking so long? I mean, you know, they were talking in terms of certain amendments being made. Why not repeal it?
No, because you must understand, within the system of the government of India are extremely powerful lobbies. The army is a very huge, powerful lobby, and they say that we can't go into any situation if you repeal this act. We need protection. If you don't give us protection, we can't go in. So, okay, you can give protection, but it can't be ad infinite. You know, it can be infinite protection, because now you have protection for those who are using the act, but you don't have protection for those who are vulnerable to the use of the act. The people are on one side, the act is for the army and the security forces. It's not for the people. So you can go and do anything you like. And nobody can surely argue that murder and rape is part of one's duty as an army personnel or as security person.
It's time now for a short commercial break, and when we come back, we will talk to Sanjay about the contemporary issues which are confronting the northeastern region. So please don't go away.